Great.
All right, everyone, welcome to episode 4 of the Fourth and Goal podcast. The boys are indeed back, or at least one of the boys is back. I'm your host, Nick Piccioni. Pete is, contrary to the title, is not dead. His Twitter account, however, is. But he is not here today, so we are instead joined by, I'm sure, a local Emmy Award winner for his role in Fever Pitch, Jordan Leandri. How you doing today, Jordo?
I'm good, Nick. How you doing, man?
I am doing just fine, Jordan. We are back after a week-long hiatus. We took a bye week. We're back. So we got a ton of stuff to cover today. A lot of stuff happened in the last 2 weeks. The league year is set to start next week, so we got to cover a lot of this stuff while it's still relevant. So let's jump right into it with a little bit of Patriots news. 2 special teamers re-signed, Brandon Bolden and Brandon King, both added to short money deals. Any thoughts, Jordo? Anything in particular that stood out to you about this?
Well, I think one thing that, it's not necessarily eye-opening yet because I think it's all but inevitable that Matthew Slater will also come back next year, Brandon Bolden and Brandon King are both guys that, are very, very reliable on special teams. So I think bringing them back was very important, even if it's not like the sexiest names out there. It's those little things that really help, especially, and it's something that Bill Belichick definitely pays a lot of attention to. So bringing those guys back were definitely 2 things that had to happen, in my opinion.
I think that's valid. My one concern with resigning these 2, is the fact that they are signed before Matt Slater, who I assume is back, but the one guy who I'm not sure it will be, who I love, is Nate Ebner. Nate Ebner is the other strictly special teamer that has yet to be re-signed. He was injured last year. I really want him back because I love the guy, but if they're already devoting about $1.5 million to these 2, that's a lot. I know it's not a lot of money against the cap, but it is a lot to spend on guys who only play on special teams. So I wonder if they're going to bring him back. I really hope they do, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I agree. I love Ebner. He's kind of a fiery guy. I remember he used to be in the secondary, and I used to hate him because he was not a particularly talented defensive back, but in a special teams role, he's been very good and good old rugby player. Shout out to Miles.
Yeah, shout out Miles.
Shout out to Miles. Yeah, he's very important to this team. Obviously last year he got hurt. It was an ACL tear, right? So
it was something with his knee. Yeah, something bad.
Yeah, and so it happened on a fake punt, I believe, as well. So we just kind of forgot about him. But yeah, worth noting that he's still not back on this roster yet. But I'm sure he'll come back too. He seems like the kind of guy that really isn't going to be drawing a lot of interest. So Bill Belichick should get him back on a relatively short money contract as well.
Yeah, hopefully. A guy who was not on short money, who got big money, is Blake Bortles. Got a huge extension deal. What was it? 3 years, $54 million for Blake Bortles?
Yeah, it was 3 and 54. I double checked the numbers right before we started. It's kind of wild considering a guy who's won 2 playoff games. Granted, he balled out against Pittsburgh, was very, very solid against New England, but we're talking about a guy who only scored 10 points against Buffalo. He's not a particularly good quarterback, and with guys like Kirk Cousins out there, just to throw a name out there, I think they definitely had better options than commit to Blake Bortles long term. But I guess it's really, we'll just wait and see on him. Maybe he'll continue to progress and he'll turn to a solid quarterback, but so far I'm not sold on him.
Yeah, that was the thing that surprised me the most, was that they made this deal when the quarterback market is saturated. There haven't been this many free agent quarterbacks of high caliber in a long time. Some of them are. Obviously Drew Brees is probably going back to New Orleans, but a lot of those guys are up in the air. And Jacksonville's team, the other 52 guys in the team, that's a desirable spot to go to. You have a team that just made. They're in the same position as Minnesota, which is currently the most desirable team to go to. So I don't understand why they would handicap themselves with Blake Bortles, even though I kind of like the guy, as a dude, but as a quarterback, he's such a wild card. You don't know what you're going to get with him. So I don't understand the move when they could have been poised to make a real run in the conference.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think, there's these teams that we always talk about that are like quarterback away, and I think that's basically where Jacksonville is. I mean, if they're banking on Bortles to continue progressing, because he took a huge step forward last year, so maybe he'll just continue on that track and he'll turn himself into maybe a top 15, top 10 quarterback in this league. We'll see, I guess. But I mean, with guys like you said, I mean, Drew Brees is probably going back to New Orleans. But I mean, even a guy like Case Keenum, who played very, very well last year on a short money deal, you don't really have to commit to him long term. If you want to go maybe draft a quarterback in this draft as well, you can maybe go somewhere somewhere along those lines. But like I said, it's really wait and see with him, because he like you said, it's a coin flip. If he could be nasty, or he could just completely crap his pants and blow you a game. So I guess we'll wait and see.
I guess we will. Sticking with the Jaguars, franchise tag period is come and gone. One of the main guys who wasn't tagged is Allen Robinson, formerly of Jacksonville. He missed the whole season with an ACL tear. He had a massive 2015. He's a very talented receiver. Do you want the Patriots to go after him, knowing that he's probably going to get huge money at the receiver spot?
Personally, I do not, only because they already have Cooks. They're going to have Edelman coming back. They have Hogan. I still want to bring back Amendola, even though I know he wants, I think, $5 million a year, which seems kind of out of Bill Belichick's range. Malcolm Mitchell's coming back. They already picked up Kenny Britt's option. I just don't see the need to add a guy like Allen Robinson while the talent is there, and I would absolutely love to have him in. There's just so much depth at wide receiver. It seems kind of like it seems like putting another body in his position you don't really need. They need to add defensive help, or maybe even replace Gronk if he wants to retire. I know we're going to get into that later, but I personally wouldn't go after Allen Robinson just because I don't think the need is there.
Now, my thing with Allen Robinson is that after that huge 2015, he laid an absolute egg in 2016. He stunk. He stinked. He was really bad in 2016, and then he goes injured immediately in 2017. So I don't know what kind of Allen Robinson you get. And knowing that he's probably going to get the biggest money out there for the receiving corps, I don't think I want to risk spending that much money, especially while you still currently have $9 million dedicated to Brandon Cooks. I don't think it's worth it to spend more big money at the receiver corps. And on Amendola, I know they're saying 3 to 5, but that's agent talk. He's going to get 2 to 3, so they'll be able to bring him back.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, I love it. I love Dola, especially with Edelman back. If he's healthy the full year, you can put Dola on damage control, and then you've got even more weapons in the playoffs. And we've seen how great he can be in the postseason.
Yeah, very true. One guy who was franchised, who hates the franchise tag like poison, is Le'Veon Bell. I never know what to think about Le'Veon Bell, because he is such a great individual talent, but he's such a fucking shithead. He's such an idiot. Yeah. So I don't know what to do with him. He's obviously immensely talented. They franchised him. He says that his retirement threats are real. I don't know what to make of the situation. What do you think, Jordo?
As far as him retiring, I think that would be a completely idiotic move on his part, considering how young he is and how talented he is. I mean, he's making just short of $14.5 million this year, and I mean he wants astronomical numbers for running back money. It's kind of ridiculous, considering the running back position doesn't necessarily make the kind of money that he's asking for, and I think 14.5 is pretty reasonable for a 1 year on a 1 year. So in the future, I mean, just go out and ball out and prove that you're worth the money you're asking for, instead of whining like a little bitch on social media, to reporters, to your team. I mean, just go out there and play. I mean, we saw this last year with Malcolm Butler with when you didn't want to take that exception, or that little option that Belichick gave him. I mean, just go out and play and prove that you're worth the money you're asking for. And I guess we'll see with Bell if he is going to be all talk and he's not going to actually act on his little threats, or if he actually does something.
Well, the thing with Le'Veon Bell is it's a thing that's constant for all running backs, and we're kind of seeing it with Dion Lewis on a much lesser pay scale right now, is that you have such a small window to make as much money and as much guaranteed money as possible. So while $14 million is nice this year, if he doesn't ball, let's say instead of signing the franchise tag, they sign him to a 3-year deal with $21 million guaranteed. If he sucks this year, or if he gets injured, who knows how much money he'll make the next year. So I don't blame him for wanting the money, especially at the position he's in, because of how short the careers are for that position. It's just him as the person that he is. When he does it, I just want to tell him to shut up. Just shut up and run. I sound like I'm on Fox News now, but I'm not. Just if you do your job like you have been every year of your career, you'll get paid next year. Because I was doing a little research on the franchise tag just to make sure I knew everything that was going on. the rule is if you get franchised for a second year, you either get 120% of what you made last year or the top 5, depending on what that was. So he's going to increase his pay this year. And if he gets franchised next year, which knowing Pittsburgh, he probably will, he'll still make more money. Like, he's going to make a ton of money. It's just a matter of he wants the security of knowing where he's going to be for a long time. So I can't fault him for that. But at the same time, like, get off of Twitter at 1 a.m. the day before your AFC divisional game. Like, come on, dude.
Yeah, I mean, he's a great talent, and like you said, I understand entirely why he wants to make the money that he's asking for. But at the end of the day, I mean, in a sense, I don't fault Pittsburgh for trying to, save money in a sense. But if you're going to be given the opportunity to franchise tag someone, I say just use it. I mean, 14.5 for a guy like Le'Veon Bell seems like a steal considering how talented he is and what kind of numbers he could put up next year and years down the road. But and we've seen in the past that he's a guy that he's been hurt in the past. He possibly gets in trouble with the league. I know he had that suspension at the beginning of a couple seasons ago with marijuana. So, I mean, he's the kind of guy that, he's a troublemaker. So maybe you're not willing to risk that on someone like that.
Yeah, very valid point. Speaking of troublemakers, we got a couple of Bennett brothers in the news this week. Marty Bennett, formerly of the Packers, suck at Aaron Rodgers, and the Patriots, he's probably going to get cut because apparently they went to him asking to renegotiate. He didn't want to, so they're going to cut him. I think he was about a $6 million cap hit, so it makes sense. What are your thoughts on this, Jordo?
I think in a sense, it means that they're pretty confident Gronk's going to return next year because I think they would want to keep Bennett at $6 million if they didn't think Gronk was going to come back. I know we've heard Jimmy Graham's possibly in that kind of discussion as well as coming to New England. He'd probably require more money than Marty Bennett, and Bennett's a solid tight end. We've seen him a couple years ago, and he's coming off of shoulder injury, so you never really know how guys are going to recover. So if he doesn't want to renegotiate, Bill already – I mean, he's a troublemaker, like you said. He gets fights at practice and stuff like that. So I don't necessarily fault him, but I think it is a good sign that Gronk may be planning on returning next year.
So I think there's no doubt the Patriots think Gronk's coming back. I know we're kind of jumping, but I'll keep this quick. I don't think they have any doubt that Gronk's coming back because guys like Rappaport and Schefter are reporting that he's coming back, and those are the guys that talk to the Patriots. It's guys who talk to Rosenthal is his agent, right? I think Rosenthal is Gronk's agent. Guys who talk to him are saying, "Oh, I don't know if he's coming back." So my feeling is that they wouldn't have cut him if they don't truly believe he's coming back. Whether or not he does is up to Gronk, obviously. Mm-hmm. But they definitely think he's coming back if they're willing to cut Marty Bennett at $6 million. On to the other Bennett. Michael Bennett got traded. What was it for? Traded for a fifth round pick?
Fifth round pick, yeah. Fifth round, and I think a seventh, yeah. Fifth or seventh.
It was him and a seventh for a fifth, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, it was him for a seventh. It was him and a seventh for a fifth, and Marcus Johnson was the
going back. Hook 'em, but also who?
Yeah.
So the report I heard, I don't know what the validity to this is that the Patriots came in with a late offer that was supposedly better, and they just decided to go on with the other one. So there are really two options here. Either one is scary, and it's that the Bill pulled a Browns and came in after the deadline. Like, he came in too late and he could have had the player, which is scary to think of. But I think they were discussing the Felger and Maz, and I hate to just kind of parrot Felger and Maz, but this is a valid point that someone brought up. They probably didn't make an offer, and they just are trying to say, we gave a big offer because they're trying to make moves for a big player and somewhere else, and they want people to know that they're involved. I like that theory better because it makes me feel better. It gives me less scaries, but I want to know what you think.
I would also like to believe that the second point that you brought up, that they're just trying to basically start fireworks and try and make you realize that they're definitely going in for something big this offseason. As far as the trade that I heard was proposed, it was a third round pick, and I'm not sure if it was a fifth as well or if it was a player to go along with that. But if it was after Philly and Seattle had already accepted or agreed on a deal, then I can see why, they wouldn't decide, oh yeah, we'll just go with the New England offer. I mean, that kind of is a douchey move. I mean, obviously it's a business and you're trying to improve anyway.
It's a very McDaniels move to make.
Yeah, it is a big McDaniels move to make. So I can see why they would stick with the Philly offer. But if you have a chance to get a better offer, the second point you brought up about them just trying to like kick the tires on everybody makes more sense to me, because I don't see why Seattle would not want to get the best offer they can for a guy, especially as talented as Michael Bennett is.
So one of my thought from the Patriots' perspective on the player is, I know he's a good player, but you look at his numbers, they don't match up to the kind of praise that he gets. Like, Michael Bennett is lauded as a great pass rusher. He doesn't have that many sacks in his career. And the thing that would worry me as a Patriots fan is a lot like Bill can deal with players that are undisciplined off the field. Michael Bennett is undisciplined on the field. He draws more offsides calls than anyone else in the league. Like, he's the one who effectively ended Super Bowl 49 by getting drawn offsides by Brady at the goal line.
Yeah.
And if he came here, he would do that one time at a critical juncture, and people would jump all over him for it. So I'm not really about that. One last thing from last week that we have to cover that is also pretty relevant to the Patriots and what we discussed last week is the fact that Marcus Peters got traded to the Rams. Jordan, I'll just let you open up this discussion. I have my own thoughts as well, but I'll let you go first.
I mean, that's a fantastic trade for the Rams, and they gave up what, two draft picks for him, and that was it.
Yes, they gave up a 4th rounder this year and a 2nd rounder next year.
I mean, that secondary is going to be fucking disgusting next year. Add Marcus Peters. I know, and that's another guy that people were talking about New England possibly getting, but he's another undisciplined guy, and he's not even necessarily like offsides, pass interference penalties. We're talking about unsportsmanlike conducts, like chucking the ref's flag into the stands at the end of a close game. I mean, I'm not entirely upset that they didn't kick the tires on Marcus Peters, but I think for the Rams, that's a fantastic trade, and getting 2 draft picks in return for Marcus Peters is a pretty solid return, I guess, considering the kind of trades that have been going on, like the Michael Bennett one, for example. I mean, I think that's a pretty fair return for Marcus Peters, considering he's a better player at his position than Bennett is at his, I think.
Yeah, it's a great deal for the Rams, especially so they're going to lose Trumaine Johnson most likely, especially since they franchised their safety. Was LaMarcus Joyner, I think, was his name. So they now have replaced Trumaine Johnson, and in terms of raw talent, they've upgraded from him with Marcus Peters. So the Rams are once again in a great position to continue to have another good year under Sean McVay, who I think is probably going to be the 2nd best coach in the league in the next couple of years. I love Sean McVay.
Yeah, he's a great coach. Did he win Coach of the Year, or was it Peterson?
It was one of those two. My guess would be McVay because he was so young, but you never know. It's never who's actually the best coach. It's always
who's the better team.
Yeah, it's which coach. Well, no, not even. It's which coach surprised you the most with a team that sucked last year.
Yeah, true. And I would say probably the Rams, considering how bad Goff was 2 years ago, and then how great he was last year. And if he continues to improve, you add Marcus Peters to your secondary, and it's already an upgrade over Trumaine Johnson. I mean, you got yourself a pretty damn good ball club next year. And it's pretty scary to think about, because I thought they were going to be like a dark horse NFC Super Bowl participant last year because of how good that defense was, how good Goff had been all year. I mean, they kind of laid an egg in the playoffs, but I think they're still an up-and-coming team, and they're a team to definitely look out for in the next couple seasons.
Yeah, they're definitely a team that can challenge the Eagles in the near future, I think. But the one thing to talk about with this specific trade is the value, because like we said, the Rams got a great deal for him. And that's something I've been noticing a lot is teams that are trading for the marquee players are getting pretty good deals. Like the Eagles got Bennett for almost nothing. Peters went for peanuts. Even Alex Smith got them a 3rd and a legit cornerback who's pretty good. So the marquee players are pretty low priced right now. So that kind of affects the Patriots and what they want to do in this offseason, because obviously me and Pete had talked last week about possibly trading for either Sherman or Peters. Now Talib is saying that he might want to come to the Patriots. And then there's one more guy who we'll talk about now, and then we'll go into Talib and Sherman in a little bit, is Josh Norman. Jason La Canfora came out with a report that Josh Norman could be traded, and the Patriots are a potential target, possibly for a 3rd-round pick. What are your thoughts on that trade and any potential of adding Josh Norman via trade right now?
I absolutely love Josh Norman's talent. I think he's a great player, and I think for a 3rd-round pick, that's a pretty damn good deal for New England to make. But I'm not entirely sure what his contract is. If you know it, just fire that out there, because I'm not entirely sure. But I know he's making quite a bit of money.
So this is the thing that makes me very weary about trading for Josh Norman is the current state of NFL cornerbacks, because now the reports were that Sherman might get traded. Now that he might be released. Talib is probably going to be released. So you're going to have guys that you can get for free who you'll get on lower cap hits than they already were, because both of those guys are making around 11. Josh Norman's currently making $13.5 million base salary and costs $17 million against the cap. So he's a big number. If you were going to trade for him, it'd have to be with a restructure of some sort. I like the player, and I like the attitude he brings, but I don't want him here for $17 million against the cap. That's a ton.
Yeah, especially since they only got 23 this offseason. So
they have more than that because they're cutting guys that haven't officially been cut yet. But It is still a lot against what they will have, because I think they're, based on what I've seen from projections, they might have around 40 million. That's almost half. That's a lot for one player, especially when you can get someone of a similar skill set like Talib or Sherman for a lower price.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that Bill Belichick will take into consideration if he's even talking about possibly acquiring Josh Norman, is the fact that Talib and Sherman are going to probably attract less money than they're already making, which is why I think a lot of teams are refusing to trade for those two guys, because they know that there's a possibility they'll get cut.
Yeah. So they've been talking about this all week on every radio station. Sherman or Talib, which would you want, and can you give me a reason why you'd want one over the other?
In terms of IQ and discipline, I would go with Sherman. But the thing with Sherman is he's coming off an Achilles injury, and he's already 29 years old. Don't necessarily know how he's going to respond to that. I mean, obviously the IQ's there. He's a little bit mouthy, but I think Bill Belichick would absolutely love to coach a guy with that kind of IQ on the field, opposing Stephon Gilmore. I think that'd be a perfect dream secondary for New England next year. But I think the injury concern and the fact that maybe he loses a step because of that Achilles makes me lean a little bit more towards Talib. Plus, he's already been here. I know he's an undisciplined twat himself, but I love Talib too. I think he's got a nice swagger to him. And they both share a hatred for Michael Crabtree, which is awesome. So, one way or the other.
I mean, those two alone prove just how much of a bitch Michael Crabtree is. I didn't like him coming out of college. I always thought he was soft, and he's proved it in spades since he came to the NFL. Because obviously Sherman screamed at Aaron Andrews, which I loved.
That was fantastic.
And then, so as you know, that Talib ripped his chain off twice, right?
Yeah, and the second time Crabtree taped it to his chest, and Talib still got it.
It was taped to his chest, and Aqib Talib reached into his jersey and ripped it off, hopefully with a little bit of chest hair on that tape, just ripping off some chains with some tape and chest hair. It's such an image. He's an insane person. Aqib Talib is a legitimately crazy person, but he's one of those crazy people that also has a little bit of he's not psychotic. He's closer to a sociopath, which sounds way worse, but it means that he has some sort of what I'm trying to say is he has some sort of intelligence to him. He's not a complete idiot. He's just, for lack of a better term, a thug.
Yeah,
but he's something special. He really is. And then Sherman's the entire opposite end of the spectrum. Sherman is the save the world SJW type. I remember he did one thing where he had a cutout of himself, and he asked it questions at a press conference, making fun of Goodell and the salary structure. I don't remember the whole thing, but it was so funny. He did it a couple of years ago. So I'd be fine with either of them here because we know Talib fits in. Sherman has the brains to fit in. And the thing with Sherman's Achilles is that other than that, before that Achilles injury, he had never, ever missed a game in his NFL career. He had played 16 games a season all 5 or 6 years before that. He is a warrior, and he stays in the field no matter what. And if he was let's say it was a guy whose skill set is more akin to Jonathan Jones, who relies a ton on his speed more than his ability to recognize routes and coverage. If that was the case and he was losing a step, it would be a big problem. But Sherman's never been a speed guy. He's always been a know where to go, anticipate routes and route trees kind of guy. And you don't need to be the fastest guy to be able to do that. So I don't think it'll affect him too much, but I would still want to know the state of the Achilles before I would sign him.
Yeah, I mean, because especially since if you're signing him, you want to know how much of the season you're going to have him for. I mean, Achilles are a tough thing to gauge in terms of when you're going to come back, and if he's missing the first 4 or 5 games of next year, I mean, I know they're saying that he's on track to be back before then, but I'm just saying, like, theoretically, if he misses the first handful of games next year, you're paying him probably $6 million or so. I mean, is it really worth it considering you could have Talib and you'd have him for the full season for close to the same price, maybe a little more, maybe a little less?
So and then the other side with Talib is something that we experienced here in New England when he was here, is that in big games, sometimes he can either, like, he's prone to not necessarily tap out, but I would say flame out. Like the one example that I go to is in the Super Bowl that he won with Denver. He should have been thrown out of that game in the first quarter because he face masked somebody so hard that he tried to break his neck like he was performing some kind of fatality in Mortal Kombat. Like, it was insane how hard he ripped this dude's face mask. So he gets really hot in those big moments, and it got him injured in New England, and it could have gotten him thrown out in Denver. So that's an important thing to look out for with him, is that he is a hothead and he is liable to placidentally shoot himself occasionally.
Just like Cheddar Bob.
Yeah. Oh, man. So let's get into Patriots offseason needs. Today's positions that we're going to be talking about are defensive tackles and quarterbacks, which is why I'm wearing the only Brady jersey I own, which wasn't made in China illegally. So, so Jordo, why don't you go into the defensive tackles that we're going to look at in the draft, and then once you're done with that, I'll go into what we're looking at on the free agent market.
So my first guy is Daron Payne. He's the defensive tackle from Bama.
Shout out Mikey.
Shout out to Mikey. Roll Tide. He had 2 sacks last year. I think he's projected to go late first round, and obviously the Patriots have a late first round pick. So if he's there, definitely worth looking into. Possibly, I mean, if he's possibly there in the second round, if they don't want to necessarily go defensive tackle in the first round, definitely take him there. I have Maurice Hurst. He had 5 sacks last year out of Michigan. He's a stud. I love him. I think he could be pretty damn good. And my third guy is Rasheem Grant. He had 10 sacks last year from USC. He's a freaking animal, but he's projected to go in the middle rounds, which means that they can focus on another position in the first couple of rounds and not miss out on this guy. And I think if he's still there in the third round, you may want to possibly look into getting him. And I know there's other guys that everyone is screaming about taking in the third, fourth rounds, but if Rasheem Grant's there, I definitely wouldn't mind seeing him get picked up there.
Nice. Would you want to take Daron Payne with that first round pick?
If he's there, it honestly depends on who else is there. I mean, I did my own mock draft, and I got the edge rusher from Ohio State. I took him. If he's there at that pick at 31, which I hear a lot of people are saying he won't be, I would go with I think his name's Hubbard. His last name's Hubbard. I'm trying to remember.
Exactly. Yeah, I know. I do know what you're talking about. Yeah.
They're saying he's drawing comparisons to Rob Ninkovich, and I think that that's something that the Patriots missed last year on top of not having, Dante Hightower in the playoffs or for the most of the season. They didn't have that kind of leader that doesn't really put up numbers, but he's always involved on every play. So he's drawing comparisons to Ninkovich, and that's a guy that I definitely wouldn't mind having on this team. But depending on who's there, I would probably go Payne at 31.
Nice. So the free agent market's really interesting because there are a lot of guys who are talented, but a lot of them has huge flaws to them. I'll talk about the former Jets, Muhammad Wilkerson, who's going to get cut by the Jets. He's only 28. We know that he's an immensely talented player, but ever since he got that big contract with the Jets, he's just absolutely shut it down. He hasn't given a fuck since then. He's only 28, but he's constantly skipping practices and missing meetings, and he's just kind of quit on them.
Isn't missing any meals, though.
No, he is not missing meals. That is a large man. Yeah, that is some super size me shit. I think that's older than you. And then the other guy, he's with Seattle now, but obviously he was a former Jet, is Sheldon Richardson, who we just know is human trash incarnate. He's another guy. He's a DN DT combo guy. He can play inside or outside. I think he's 29-ish, but he's just a pile of garbage. Like, I don't know. I don't really want him here, even though he is immensely talented.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and one thing to look at for New England, I mean, obviously you're probably looking to add more depth because they're getting Rivers back next year. I know he's not a tackle, but he's an edge rusher, so they're going to be getting him back next year. I'm not necessarily sure. I mean, they didn't pick up Alan Branch's option, so he's likely out the door unless he comes back for short money. They still have Malcolm Brown. Shout out to Pete, hook him. But yeah, as far as defensive tackles go, I look probably more towards the draft and hoping to groom somebody that you could keep long term rather than going after a guy like Sheldon Richardson or Muhammad Wilkerson, because those guys have just kind of mailed it in at this point.
So the best guy in the market is not a guy who has any sort of character problems that I know of. It's David Irving out of Dallas. He's only 25 and he's a stud when he plays. He has a crazy he doesn't play a ton of snaps. He's a third down guy for the Cowboys, but he has a crazy ratio. The problem with him is that he's a restricted free agent, and they might put the first round tender on him. And I would rather draft a guy at 31 or trade for a better player than David Irving than use it in an RFA as an RFA. The two guys that I would look for them to maybe actually go after that would be worth it are Dontari Poe and Nick Fairley. Dontari Poe signed a prove-it deal last year with Atlanta. He played pretty well, but I don't know if people are still willing to give him a big money contract, so he might not have a huge market. He's only 27. He always has a very high ceiling. He's very talented, but the question with him is commitment. And then Nick Fairley, who's been really good his whole career, but he has some sort of heart condition. He's already 30, so his market's going to be pretty down. But if his heart condition isn't interfering with his ability to play, if he can play, he's a baller. He's a good, talented player, and he could probably help this team as depth on the defensive tackle interior.
Yeah, I've actually always kept tabs on Nick Fairley because I've always found him particularly talented and a particularly interesting guy to watch. I mean, like you said, 30 years old, he's got a heart condition. I mean, that's going to scare some teams. It's going to lower his value, maybe even a little bit more than his age does. So, at a team-friendly deal, not a lot against the cap. I could see him coming in. He'd be a very solid depth guy as well. I agree.
Yeah. Let's move into quarterbacks. There's not much for me to talk about. We can, at the end of the show, depending on how much time we have left, we can talk about where we think all the quarterbacks, free agents are going to go. But for now, let's just talk about who you think the Patriots might draft, and then I'll give my thoughts on that as well. So let's hear it, draft specialist Jordo. Let's see what you got.
The guy that everyone's talking about is Kyle Alaleta out of Richmond. I mean, it seems like the inevitable third round, fourth round selection for New England. Just the kind of guy that's kind of not necessarily off the grid, but he's not necessarily one of the most talented guys out there. He seems like a pretty coachable guy. He's got a good IQ. He's a solid guy. He's a good size. And the other one that I personally like is Mason Rudolph out of Oklahoma State. I know Pete hates his guts. He called him a little pussy, but he likes his size as well. I think he's got a pretty talented arm. I saw him play a few games last year, and he can absolutely shoot it. And I like him. He's probably another guy that would be taken right around the time Laletta is, maybe a little bit before him, because I think he's just simply more raw talent out of college. But I think if they're looking for a guy to groom for the next couple years and then possibly replace Brady down the road, it would be Laletta.
Yeah, I almost think like it's almost a foregone conclusion that if they're drafting a quarterback, it's going to be him. He has all the Belichick signs. Some relation to lacrosse somewhere. I think he played lacrosse. His dad has ties to Navy. Like, it's almost a done deal that if he's there, they're going to draft him. And I haven't seen him, so I don't really know what to think of him. I would like to believe that all the reports about him are good and that his Senior Bowl performance is indicative of the ceiling, but I don't really know. And then as for Mason Rudolph, I don't like, and this is going to make Pete hate me. I'm going to get demoted tonight, but I don't like any Big 12 quarterbacks scare me. They give me the spookies. Like, they never pan out. Like, Sam Bradford is currently the best Big 12 quarterback in the league, isn't he? Like, they all kind of suck because they don't play defenses in conference, and so they put up these massive numbers. They get drafted too high, and they get thrust into starting roles right away. Which is why, because of that last point, I'd be okay if they picked Mason Rudolph, but like really late, like a 4th or 5th rounder, maybe. But other than that, I would. Yeah. If they draft Kyle Aletta, at 95, I'm fine with that. If they draft other guys, what is it named? Chase Litton, I think, is out of Marshall, right? There's some reported interest in him. He's a monster.
I haven't seen much of him, but yeah, they seem to like him a good amount.
He's a monster. He's 6'6". He's a big man. And then Nick Falk, I think he's out of Washington or Washington State. I don't know. I never know any of those schools. I don't pay enough attention to the college game to know. That's why I leave it to Pete, or in this case, you. But the one thing, there is one more thing I would consider, and it is a long shot, and a lot has to go right for it to work. Is if, oh my God, if Lamar Jackson falls to 31 and they haven't traded that pick away, I would consider drafting Lamar Jackson there, because I think Mikey put this really well when he explained this when we were having this debate. If he stayed in one more year, he would be a really good quarterback prospect. And the fact that he came out this year means that a lot of people want to look at him as a possible receiver, which he is a waste of his talent because he does have at least some ability to throw, even if it's not that polished yet. So if he's the only one of those top guys that might slip, because obviously Rosen and Darnold are going way before they should, and same with Mayfield, but he could slip. And if he slips to 31, I wouldn't mind the Patriots taking a chance on him because he has so much talent, and he'd be able to sit and watch Brady and learn from him for a couple years.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point on Lamar Jackson. And it's one of the great things about always having a late first-round pick is there's really no wrong decision unless you just go completely off the grid and go get some rando out of Rutgers that should be undrafted and you draft him in the first round. But
you mean Jordan Richards?
Yeah, like Jordan Richards.
Jordan Richards.
I hate him.
The second worst person with the name Jordan.
Yeah, I wonder who the first guy is. Fucking hell. I hate you.
I love you too,
but
Jordan.
Yeah, if he slips to 31, I definitely wouldn't hate taking a flyer on him. I mean, he's a talented guy and he can move a good amount, and that'd be something that'd be interesting to see after going from Brady, who legit runs in quicksand, to a guy like Lamar Jackson who can absolutely fly and make plays with his legs on top of with his arm. And then obviously, there's the learning factor behind Brady. Maybe he'll pick up a few things. Maybe he'll get on that TB12 diet, and then all of a sudden we'll have the second great quarterback that plays till he's 45. Get on that TB12 diet.
Yeah, that TB12 diet. I should get on that TB12 diet.
I should get on that TB12 diet.
No. I don't know if I wrote this down, but one thing I do want to talk about is the report earlier this week that the Patriots could use that 31 to trade for Jadeveon Clowney. What do you think of that?
I would absolutely love that. I mean, it solves a huge issue. Obviously, the pass rush. I mean, Jadeveon Clowney is an absolute freaking stud. He scares me. Like, I remember when the Pats played them in the divisional round 2 years ago. I mean, he was all over the place, and he was in a good way for Houston. He was a freaking beast. He was one of the best players on the field for both sides of the ball, either team. He was a freaking stud, and I absolutely love Clowney. The one concern with me is his injury history, and that's one reason why I would be a little bit afraid to trade a first-round pick for him. But the talent's definitely there. I mean, he's the potential of being one of the best pass rushers in the league. It's just the health thing. He's got to stay on the field, and it's something that he really hasn't been able to do so far in his career.
Yeah, I think I'd be definitely willing to try it out. I mean, he's still young. He obviously has a ton of ability. It's just if it's about him staying healthy, I mean, I don't want to say that there are things you can do to prevent injury, but it felt like everyone was having a bad year in that Houston locker room in terms of injuries. So maybe a change of scenery helps. I don't know. People are weird like that. It's sometimes just moving places helps you get over an injury bug. Like it's something to do with training staff or whatever. But I would love to see him here. I think that would be something really worthwhile to look into, if not actually do.
Yeah, and it's a surefire thing because the talent's there. I mean, like we said, and health is always a risk in football anyway because even the most durable guys wind up getting hurt. When we saw Richard Sherman didn't miss a game for 5 years, then all of a sudden tore his Achilles. I mean, it could happen just like that, just like a snap of the finger. So it's definitely worth taking a little bit of a flyer on, considering it's the surefire thing with the talent. It's just if he stays on the field, then it's an absolute steal of a first round pick. Considering I think he'd be better for New England than pretty much anyone they could take at 31.
Yeah, I think that's fair. All right, let's dive into the Gronk stuff. There's so much. It's been 2 weeks, and we could spend a whole show talking about it, but I'll run through just kind of the Cliff Notes version of it. On February 24th, Gronk tweets out a fortune cookie that he read at his local Chinese restaurant, citing foresee with 3 E's, your own future, control your own temptations, and your destiny will be not just be reached. Real poetic words from Rob Gronkowski.
Holy shit, that gave me AIDS.
Yeah, I know. He real rough there. I guess none of the brothers were around to spell check him, so he just kind of sent that out. He then tweets, "There are no limits," with exactly five exclamation points. Then Ian Rappaport tweets that Gronk is expected back. Gronk tweets #clueless with that little shrug emoji. And then Mojo Rawley tweets at him asking if he wants to talk and to send him a DM. What do you think about this whole thing? Please, I have my opinions, but I want to know what you think, Mr. Jordan.
It seems like a huge soap opera kind of feeling to it. I mean, it's just like adding drama. Maybe it's trying to like, stir the pot between like all these fans that fucking hate New England, hate Gronk with a burning passion. Like, oh, he's leaving, he's gonna become this WWE star. The Patriots are gonna suck because they're not gonna have that stud tight end anymore. And I just think it's all a show, and I think it's just a bunch of drama, and he's just gonna wind up coming back next year anyway, like nothing happened. I mean, Gronk's the kind of guy that likes to have a little bit of fun, and this is the first time he's exhibited it in this way. But I think it's just a huge facade, and he's gonna wind up coming back next year. I don't really have much doubt in my mind that he'll be back in next season.
So I think he'll be back next season, but I don't think it's all fake. I think that there's a lot of stuff here that is kind of legit. For the main one being Gronk would be an excellent WWE wrestler.
Like, he fits it.
Oh, perfectly. He fits so well, and he's already done it. He knows Mojo Rawley because he did something with him at WrestleMania, during training camp, and that's one of the things that I don't know if Tommy Curran specifically pointed this out, but that was one of the things that I related to the Tommy Curran story that came out I think last week, is that Gronk kind of did his own thing and kind of went against the Patriots' wishes a little bit during training camp and during the summer. Like he went on WWE. Who knows if he got clearance to do that? And then he did an interview with was it Mark Daniels, I think, about his diet when the Patriots asked him to not. And I think that was more related to the Guerrero spiteful relationship they had with him. But it's still kind of Gronk doing his own thing and not really being happy with what the Patriots want him to do. So I think there's some legitimate issues Gronk has with the team. And I don't think that this is just him dicking around. I think he wants more money. I think he does. And not just everyone wants more money. I'd love to have more money. I'd love to have an income above $0 a month. But
knew that was coming.
Yeah, right? Am I really that predictable? Oh, jeez. But it's something you have to consider with him, is that he's been working on incentives the last year. I think he would like that money to be guaranteed and then maybe add some more incentives on top of it. That's just what I think.
He's definitely worth whatever money he's asking for. I mean, we're talking about the guy that's arguably the greatest tight end ever. You could hang him up. I mean, he's really got nothing to prove at this point. I mean, he's already one of the greatest ever. He'd be a first ballot Hall of Famer if he retired today. He's already got 2 rings. He's made. I mean, the one thing he hasn't done is make a big payday. That's really about it. That's all he's really got left to play for is making that huge money deal. But other than that, I mean, like I said, already arguably the greatest ever at the tight end position. He's won 2 rings. He's been like you said, and like I said, he's a guy that could definitely jump into the WWE and be very successful in that field because, I mean, look at him. I mean, he just fits it, and his personality fits it and all that. He's already done it before. I mean, there's probably a little bit of truth, but I ultimately think no matter what, he's going to wind up being back next year. And if the same sort of emotions come of Gronk next year, there'll probably be a little bit more legitimacy, and I'd definitely be more worried next year.
Yeah, I think that's valid. All right, well, we're getting near the end here. Why don't we we're kind of out of topic, so why don't we just go ahead and talk about the free agent quarterbacks and where we think they'll end up, just to kill a little bit of time because it's a little fun. Drew Brees, right. New Orleans. It's got to be New Orleans, right?
Definitely New Orleans. I mean, I don't see another realistic place for him to go. I mean, he's. I know he hasn't been there his whole career, but he just has that kind of lifer feel to him, even though he wasn't in New Orleans his whole career. But he's definitely going to retire there, so he'll probably stay there.
Yeah. Then obviously the other big name on the market is Kirk Cousins. The early thoughts were that he'd go to Denver. Now apparently it's between Minnesota and the Jets, which, if you ask me, should be great news for Minnesota. What do you think?
I think it's going to be the Vikings. I mean, they're offering him $3.91, and it's mostly guaranteed, right?
Well, what I heard was that the rumblings were the Jets were going to offer him a fully guaranteed contract. Like, that was like the rumor, and then someone came out and said that the Vikings are prepared to offer him 3 years, 91, fully guaranteed. So if the money's the same, he'd be a fool not to go to Minnesota and join that team.
Yeah, he definitely. I personally think he would go to Minnesota, and I think the Jets are kind of hell-bent on taking Mayfield at 6 anyway. So
I could see them taking Mayfield and just continuing their line of terribly drafted quarterbacks that don't pan out. I wonder how Bryce Petty's going to feel if they draft Baker Mayfield. I'm sure it would hurt Christian Hackenberg's feelings too, or whoever the fuck they have now.
Who cares about Christian Hackenberg? I mean, I remember that dude got sent home from practice because he couldn't break the huddle the right way.
Oh God. Case Keenum.
Case Keenum.
Because I'm pretty sure now that Cousins is going to Minnesota, which means they're not going to re-sign him. They didn't franchise him. They didn't extend him. So he's free and clear to go wherever he wants. Where do you think he's going to end up? Do you have any developing opinions on that?
I'd say probably Denver or the Jets. I mean, he's a safe guy. He's a solid quarterback. He's not going to – I mean, he sucked against the Eagles in the NFC title game, but, I mean, he's a solid quarterback. He doesn't kill you more often than not. He may not help you necessarily, but he's not going to kill you. And honestly, if you're a Jets quarterback, I'm pretty sure you wouldn't – or a Jets fan, you probably wouldn't hate having a guy that's not going to kill you every single week.
Yeah, I would say Denver. Assuming Cousins goes to Minnesota like he should, I think Keaton's almost a lock for going to Denver. Unless the other guy that Denver might sign, who I love and who's never gotten a fair shake, is McCarron, because he was supposed to be traded. He was supposed to be traded to the Browns, and then the Browns browned it up, so they didn't get him.
Yeah, I like McCarron. I mean, I've always felt like he'd be a talented quarterback. I think Denver makes a lot of sense. Cleveland makes a lot of sense. I know you said they browned up the trade, but I mean, if they can get him for just money next year or this year, I could see that being a possibility as well. But I personally think it'll be Denver if Keenum doesn't go there.
And I think the other dark horse place would be Arizona, because they have no quarterbacks on the team right now. They don't have a single quarterback.
Oh, yeah. Good point. They definitely need to solve that.
Yeah, so I would see either him or Bradford going to Arizona. And the other one I would maybe think goes to the Jets. I think those two are kind of around similar talent levels, and they'll probably end up in one of those two teams. All right, well, we are just around at time, I think. Jordan, thanks for joining us this week. Hopefully Pete will be back next week if he decides to not be a fuck. But
I stuck that bad? Stuck that bad?
Oh, I pray Pete's back. I'll pray to whatever God you come to me with. I don't care. I'll join.
I'll pray too.
I'll fly to Utah and join Mitt Romney in whatever Mormon tabernacle he's at and pray that Pete comes back.
I feel like Evan Drellick right now. I'm trying to talk about other sports. I'm a baseball guy. What the fuck am I doing here?
Hey, you filled an ad for me, Jordan.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that's it for us this week. Tune in next week. We'll be talking about something. Who knows? Whatever. All right.
Something.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. Have a good week.